Betrayal in marriage. She was betrayed for 20 years. She discovered the betrayal after he died. A true story of betrayal. The kind that makes your heart tighten, your throat close, and anger rise in your chest. A pain that begins slowly, like a discreet sting, and ends like an avalanche that destroys everything that was once called love. This is the story of an ordinary woman, a wife who believed in her husband, who swore fidelity before God, a woman who chose to trust, love, build, even with difficulties, even when life seemed unfair. And what did she get in return? Lies, years of deception, a whole life hidden behind smiles and excuses. But the worst part wasn't being betrayed. No, what hurts the most is finding out after he died, when there was no more confrontation, no chance to demand explanations, no right to shout, why? Just silence. And a box. A simple box that changed everything. This story begins in a modest house in a simple neighborhood where neighbors still greet each other in the morning and exchange recipes on the sidewalk. It was there that they lived together for more than 2 decades. She, a dedicated housewife, always present. He, a truck driver, absent for days, but always returning with gifts, stories, and the tired smile of someone who says, "It's for us." She believed, maybe out of love, maybe out of habit, maybe because sometimes believing hurts less than seeing. For 20 years, she was a wife, mother, caregiver, counselor, and emotional nurse. She lived each moment believing she was with someone real, and even in the moments when something seemed wrong, when his eyes looked away, or the gifts came in double, as if to cover up a guilt, she preferred to keep quiet. Until one day, everything changed. His death was sudden, a heart attack, one of those that arrives in the middle of the night, without warning, without time to say goodbye. She cried, she suffered, she lost her footing, like any woman who loses the man of her life. But it was in mourning that the truth began to slip through. The cracks, that was when she found, among old documents, a letter, then another, and then another, in the name of another woman, with words he had never written to her, words of love, of longing, of plans. It was impossible to deny. He had another, and from the content of the letters, he had another life. And she lived deceived for 2 decades. How did no one see it? How did she not notice it herself? The anger, the shame, the feeling of humiliation, all of it swallowed her up at once. But she needed to know more. Who was this woman? How long had she been there? Did they have children? What else was he hiding? And that's when the story, which already seemed cruel, plunged into something even deeper, more devastating. Before I continue, I ask you in all sincerity, if it were you, what would you do? Would you have the courage to continue investigating? Or would you bury it all along with him, pretending you never knew anything? Comment below. I want to hear from you. And if real, strong, and courageous stories like this touch you in any way, like this video, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because what comes next will move you in a way you never imagined.
Hello, my name is Luciana, and if you are listening to this, it is because you somehow want to understand how someone can live 20 years next to a person and yet not really knowing her. I don't really know how to start, because even today, even after everything, there are times when it feels like I'm trapped in a nightmare that never ends. But I'll try, because I need to tell you. I need to get this out of me. I met Eduardo when I was 23. He was a truck driver. Strong, tall, funny. The kind of guy who walks into a place and everyone seems to notice him. I was quieter. I worked as a kitchen assistant in a bakery near my mother's house. He started coming over for coffee. At first, we just said good morning. Then the compliments and the looks started. And one day, he left me a little note written on a 2-reel note. "You have the most beautiful smile I've ever seen in my life." I should have been suspicious then, right? A man who knows how to use words like that usually has practice. But I felt special. I felt seen. And I wanted so much to be loved. We started dating. Within 6 months, we were living together. Within a year, we were married in a civil ceremony. No party, no pomp, just the two of us and a simple lunch with the family. I thought I was entering the beginning of my life. And in a way, I was. Except I had no idea what would come next. Life with Eduardo was never perfect. But who has a perfect life, right? He spent a lot of time away because of his travels. Sometimes, he would go 5 or 6 days without giving me any news. And when I asked, he would say that his cell phone was dead, that he had no signal, that he was tired. He always had that soft voice, that caring manner, that made me believe in everything. At first, I even questioned it. I would have fits of jealousy, ask if he had someone else. My head would go crazy. But he would always calm me down. Sometimes he would cry. He would say that I was the only woman he had ever loved in his life, that he would never do anything to hurt me. And I wanted so much to believe him. I got pregnant after 2 years of marriage. I lost the baby when I was 3 months old. It was such a huge pain that it consumed me inside. And he wasn't there. He was on a trip to the south, transporting timber. He couldn't get there in time. When he got there, I was already at home, with stitches and my heart in pieces. He cried. A lot. He hugged me and said we would try again, that everything would be okay. But we never tried again. We never talked about children again. And I, out of fear or tiredness, let it go. The years went by. He was always traveling. I was always waiting. I cooked the meals he liked, kept the house clean, and sorted his clothes. It was as if my life revolved around his comings and goings. When he was there, everything was bright. When he left, it was as if a hole opened up inside me. My parents said he wasn't a trustworthy man. My friends said he was too smooth-talking, to be honest. But I didn't want to see it. Because admitting that I was being deceived was admitting that I had thrown my life away. And nobody wants to face that, right? I remember one night when he came back from a trip with a silver bracelet. He said it was from a craftsman from Minas Gerais who had seen it and thought of me. I thought it was beautiful, but the smell of it? It had a woman's perfume, a sweet, strong perfume that wasn't mine. When I mentioned it, he laughed. He said the saleswoman had tested the piece on her arm and that the smell stayed. And I accepted it. As always. But the doubt remained. A little seed planted deep down. And every now and then, it would sprout. When he took a while to answer. When he was more affectionate than usual. When he brought a gift without a date. I could feel it. Something told me that something was wrong. But I didn't want to see it. Until he died. It was on a Tuesday. I had spoken to him on Sunday. He said he was coming back from a trip, that he was going to stop at the garage to change a tire and then come straight home. He never arrived. He had a heart attack inside the truck, parked at the gas station. He died. And all my dreams about him. I was in shock. I screamed. I cried. I broke down. I had to identify the body, organize the wake, deal with everything alone. And in the midst of all this, I still had to comfort people, pretend I was strong. It was the day after the burial that I found the box. It was in his closet, way back, behind his winter clothes. It was an old shoebox, all yellowed. I only opened it because I was looking for his documents to file the probate papers. And when I opened it, my world fell apart. Letters, photos, hotel receipts, birthday cards, love notes, all from another woman. And it wasn't recent either. It was dated 2004. In other words, he had been with someone else for almost 20 years. I was shaking. My heart was racing. I read his words like they were knives in my chest. You are my peace. I wanted to sleep with you every night. If I could go back in time, I would have chosen you from the beginning. And then, I saw the worst, a photo of him with her, and a child in her arms. I couldn't breathe. I sat on the bedroom floor, hugging the box, sobbing. The pain wasn't just from betrayal, it was from a whole life stolen. I felt stupid, deceived, used. How could he have the nerve? How could he smile at me, sleep with me, eat the food I cooked, and then go to sleep with her? Have a baby with her? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the box on my lap and looked at everything, one by one, every piece of the lie that was my marriage. I felt poisoned inside. Anger, grief, love, disgust. It was all mixed together. And worst of all, I couldn't ask. I couldn't confront him. He was already dead. The next morning, I was still there, sitting on the couch, with the box on my lap. The day had dawned. The sun had come in through the crack in the curtain, and I hadn't slept a wink. I didn't cry anymore. I was numb. It was as if my body had turned off some internal switch to keep from falling apart completely. All I felt was emptiness. A hole where there used to be love, routine, companionship. Even though all of that now had another name, lies. I went to the kitchen on autopilot and put water on to boil, as I did every day. But I found myself asking, for what? For whom? My husband was dead. And now I knew he wasn't really mine. He never was. He shared his life with me and another woman. And it wasn't a fling, as many call it. It was a parallel, long-lasting relationship, with declarations of love, trips, a child involved. It was a second family. And me? What was I? Plan B? I picked up my phone. I opened the photo gallery. I started to look through everything. Birthdays, Christmases, random selfies we took when he came back from his trips. Always smiling. Always. Pretending. Or was that smile sincere and shared? Did he love them both? Or was he using me as a facade, as a safe place, while his love lived in another house, in another body? The truth is that the more I thought, the more questions arose, and no answers came, because the only one who could answer me was underground. But then, deep inside the box, among the yellowed papers and stained memories, I found a name. A full name. It belonged to a woman named Carla de Oliveira. The last name meant nothing to me, but the name Carla gave me chills. It was too simple, too common, and at the same time, there was something about it that made me feel sick. Along with the name, there was a phone number written on a florist's card. The paper was a little faded, but it was readable. And then I made a decision. I was going to call. My hands were shaking, my heart was in my throat. But I dialed. It rang once, twice. On the third time, someone answered. A woman's voice, mature, firm. Hello? My throat went dry. For a moment, I almost hung up. But I took a deep breath and said, Hi, are you Carla? Silence. Who's speaking? I'm sorry to call you like this, I know it's strange. But, have you met Eduardo? Eduardo Mendonça? Another silence. A heavy silence. Tense. I heard her breathing change. Who are you? I took another deep breath. My voice was already breaking. I'm his wife. I was. He passed away this week. The line went dead. I thought she had hung up. But then she let out a long sigh, almost a wail. I know. Those 2 words left me breathless. You know? I found out the next day. A friend of his told me. I didn't think you'd look for me. But deep down, I knew this day would come. It was like a stab. She knew. She always knew. And me? I was the last to know. We started talking, at first, cautiously, then with a mixture of pain and anger. She told me that she had met Eduardo on a trip, many years ago, that he had said he was single, then separated, then married, but unhappy, always changing his speech, depending on the mood. She said he was the love of her life, that they had tried to break up with her several times, but never succeeded. That he was sweet, present, and that, yes, she knew about me. You knew about me, and yet you stayed with him? My voice came out shaky, but filled with anger. I fell in love before I knew it. When I found out, it was too late. He said he would leave you, but he never did. And I heard that with a bitter taste in my mouth. She was the other one, but she was the one who seemed more sincere. She spoke with pain, with truth. And in the midst of my hatred, I understood. She was also deceived. In a different way, but she was. Did he have a child with you? I asked, even though I knew the answer. She took a while to respond. Yes, his name is Caio. He'll be 17 this month. There, I cried, because Eduardo not only had another relationship, he had a son, a teenager, an almost man, and he never told me. He never even mentioned it. She told me that Eduardo visited his son from time to time, that he helped him financially, but that he never really took responsibility. Caio thought his father was a special uncle, a friend of his mother's, and it was only recently, when he was 15, that she told him the truth. I disconnected the connection feeling worse than when I did, because now I knew. I knew everything. But knowing doesn't bring relief. Sometimes knowing only hurts more. In the days that followed, I searched the house. I found more traces of him. Old messages, documents with different addresses, bank transfers, rent receipts. He was supporting another household. He gave her gifts. He traveled with her. There was even a cruise that he said was for work. But that, in fact, he went on with Carla. And I was the backdrop. The woman with the tidy house, the ready-made rice and beans, the ironed tablecloth. I was the ghost wife, the comfortable shadow where he rested between lies. I found myself looking in the mirror, asking, how did I not see it? How did I accept so little? How did I settle for crumbs thinking it was a feast? The truth is that we get used to little. We learn to be grateful for the minimum. Because being a woman, many times, is this: annulling yourself to fit into other people's worlds. I erased myself so that he could shine. And when he left, I didn't know who I was anymore, but something inside me changed. I couldn't erase the past, but I could decide what to do with it. So I called Carla again. We arranged to meet for coffee. She came to my house, and there, face to face, 2 women who shared the same man, without ever touching each other. Yard together, they suffered together, because deep down, we were victims of the same snake charmer. We talked for hours. She showed me pictures of her son. She told me things about him that matched things I had also experienced. It was like putting together a puzzle where the pieces were scattered across 2 different houses. At the end of the day, I hugged her, and it was a real hug, a hug of shared pain, of understanding. I never thought I would hug my husband's lover one day, but I did. because strangely enough, she was the only one who knew what I felt, the only one who understood the depth of that pain. I went back home and sat on the couch again. The box was still there, but this time, I didn't look at it with anger. I looked at it with pity, not for myself, but for him. Because he died without ever being true. He lived a life of lies, divided, hidden, and in the end, he left no memories. He left questions, sorrows, pieces. Today, I'm still trying to figure out what to do with all of this. I'm still trying to rebuild myself. But I promised myself one thing. I will never again accept less than I deserve. After that coffee with Carla, something inside me flipped a switch. It was as if I had finally stopped waiting for an explanation that would never come. I accepted that Eduardo was not who I thought he was. And more than that, I accepted that maybe I had never been what he said he loved. It hurt, but it was liberating. The next day, the family lawyer called me. He said he urgently needed to talk to me about the will. The word will made my stomach turn. I hadn't even thought about it. I was still processing the grief and betrayal, and now I had to deal with the practicalities of losing someone, the bureaucracy, the documents, the inheritance. It was as if life demanded that I keep going, even though my heart was imploding. I scheduled the meeting for the next day, in the dark room of his office, which smelled of old paper and over-polished furniture. The lawyer, a serious gentleman in a worn suit, looked at me over his glasses and slowly opened the folder. He said, directly, "Mrs. Helena, your husband left a will. He updated this document 6 months before he passed away. 6 months ago." It gave me chills. Was he sick? Did he know something was going to happen? Or did he just want to make sure? What? The lawyer opened the envelope and began to read. I couldn't quite understand the legal terms, but I got the gist. He had divided everything into 2 parts. One half for me, and the other for his son, the son he had with Carla. At that moment, my entire body froze. It was no surprise. I already knew about Caio's existence, but seeing it written, made official, sealed with a recognized signature, it made me realize it brutally. Is that cool? I mean, he never officially acknowledged the boy. I asked, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. He did acknowledge. It's all here. The lawyer turned a few more pages. The birth certificate was updated last year. He is legally your husband's son. The surname Mendonça is even on it. My world spun. While I thought we were living a peaceful marriage, he was not only hiding a child, but also officially registering. Him? And he made a will. And me? I was just the woman who was being covered up, literally and figuratively. The lawyer tried to smooth things over, saying that, at least I got half. But who cares about percentages when what was taken from you wasn't money, but dignity? I returned home dazed. I went in, closed the door, and dropped my bag on the floor. I sat on the living room floor, leaning against the wall, and started to laugh. A bitter, uncontrolled laugh, like someone who no longer knows whether to cry or laugh. Because in the end, the story was this. My husband cheated on me for almost 2 decades, had a child with another woman, supported 2 households, registered the boy, updated the will, and died. Simple as that. And me? I stayed, cooking, loving, trusting. But it was that very night with my head throbbing that I decided to do something. Something that would give me back control of my life. I called Carla. I want to meet Caio. It took her a while to respond. Then she said she understood, but that maybe it was too soon. It's not for him. It's for me. I need to look into this boy's eyes and understand what Eduardo saw. I need to know who he was to this boy. 2 days later, she sent me the address. It was a simple house in a remote neighborhood. I took a taxi and went. At the gate, Carla greeted me with a worried but kind look. She took me inside and offered me water. And then she called Caio. When he walked into the room, I stopped. It was like seeing a young version of Eduardo. The same eyes, the same calm walk, the same way of putting his hands in his pockets. "This is Helena," she said, not knowing how to introduce me. He just nodded politely. "Hey." "Hi, Caio. I am your father's wife." I was, actually. My voice came out low, but firm. He nodded. He didn't look scared or angry. Just curious. We sat down and started talking. Little by little, he started to open up. He told me that he knew who I was, but that he had never met me in person. That my father rarely spoke about me, but he said that I was a good woman. That I took care of the house and the family. He spoke with respect, but without emotion, and that left a lasting impression on me. Eduardo was a fragmented presence in his life. He wasn't a real father. He was a visitor, an occasional character. And yet, he loved him. You could see it in the way he spoke, even though he tried to hide it. I stayed there for almost 2 hours. When I said goodbye, Caio accompanied me to the gate, and before I left, he said, "Thanks for coming. I always wondered who you were." Those words kept ringing in my head the whole way back. Who were you? And I asked myself, who was I after all? The official wife? The deceived one? The supporting actress? But I wouldn't let that be my final label. The next day, I called the lawyer again. I said I wanted full access to the assets left by Eduardo. He hesitated, but I was firm. I wanted to understand everything: accounts, investments, assets in my name and in his name. And to my surprise, I discovered something else. There was an apartment paid off in Eduardo's name and Carla's. Yes, he didn't just support another family. He built a home with them, officially, legally, documented. It was too much. It was like discovering a betrayal within a betrayal. I went back to look for her, this time not with anger, but with clarity. "Did you know that his name is on that property with yours?" She turned pale. "No." He said he had made a promise, that he would give me stability, but he didn't say he put it in his name too. I thought it was just mine. Of course it wasn't. He made empty promises to both of them. He told her he would stay with her. He told me he loved me. And all the while, he just did what he wanted, his way, hiding everything. That night, I took a long shower. I let the hot water run down my shoulders, and there, in the steam of the bathroom, I cried again. But it was the last time. From then on, I started to get back on my feet. I spent days organizing everything. I sold the beach apartment he had bought, not out of revenge, but because I didn't want anything that smelled like him. I donated the clothes, closed the joint account, and blocked the cards that were still in his name. I removed the Mendonça surname from my documents. I signed my name again. And then, I did something symbolic. I invited Carla and Caio to dinner at my house, at the house where he lived with me for more than 20 years. I prepared Eduardo's favorite dish, chicken stroganoff with straw potatoes and fluffy rice. Not for him, but for me, because I needed to end that cycle with an act of peace. The table was set, 3 places, and in the center, an empty chair. When we sat down, Carla looked at me and asked in a whisper, "Why this dinner?" I took a deep breath and said, "Because we spent years sharing a man. Now, let's share the end of this story." She cried. Caio lowered his head. And I felt at peace. Not because I forgave, but because I freed myself. The dinner was 2 weeks ago. Since that night, something inside me has calmed down. Not completely, Not like someone who closes a book and puts it on the shelf, but like someone who carefully folds a page, knowing that they can still go back to it. Because certain chapters, even when closed, remain alive in the memory. After Carla and Caio left, I was alone in the living room for a while. The empty chair was still there. His plate was untouched. I had placed the food there as a symbol, a kind of ritual, and it remained the same. Untouched, cold, forgotten, like so many other parts of our history. I cleared the table without rushing. I washed the dishes. I folded the tablecloth. I put the silverware back in its place. It was a kind of ritual. Each ordinary gesture carried a new meaning. I wasn't cleaning a kitchen. I was cleaning pain, washing away the remnants of everything that had been. But what surprised me in the following days was the emptiness. Not the emptiness of his absence, because that absence already existed before he died, but the emptiness of my identity. I was his wife. What now? I no longer knew how to answer simple questions like, "What do you like to do alone?" Or, "Who are you without him?" I realized that I had spent so much time revolving around his life, his desires, his choices, that I had forgotten to choose myself. I started doing small things. I went back to walking early in the morning, like I used to do before I got married. I went to the market by myself. I bought a necklace just because I thought it was pretty. And I found myself crying because, for the first time in a long time, a choice was mine and mine alone. But the process of finding myself again also brought ghosts. I got a message from his sister, Irene. She wanted to talk. We arranged to meet for coffee. And after the third sip, she was direct. "You know that Eduardo loved you, right?" I stared at her in silence. What was I going to say? He loved her in a strange way? He loved me and the other girl too? She continued. He was complicated. He always was. But he spoke of you fondly. He said you were his safe haven. Ah, the so-called safe haven. I was the place he went back to when he wanted stability. But he also wanted adventure, something new, another bed, and he went looking for that in another woman. The truth is that men like him want everything, and they give nothing back. Irene gave me a little box at the end. She said that Eduardo had asked her to keep it and give it to me after everything was over. It was small, made of light wood. Inside was a letter, handwritten. I recognized his handwriting immediately. My heart raced, my hands sweated, but I took a deep breath and read, "Helena, if you're reading this, it's because I've already left. And I wanted to apologize to you. I don't even know where to start, so I'll just go straight to the point. I made mistakes. Many times. I cheated on you. I lied. I hid. And even so, you stayed. I know there's no way to fix it. But I want you to know that even though you were a scoundrel, I loved you. In a twisted way. In my own way. You were everything to me. I didn't make this will to hurt you. I did it because Caio is not to blame. I just hope that one day you can forgive me and move on in peace. Edward." I finished reading with my hands shaking. The letter didn't relieve me. It made me angry. Because asking for forgiveness after death is easy. It doesn't require change. It doesn't require courage. It's just a relief for the conscience of the one who leaves, leaving the other with the pieces. I threw the letter into the drawer and didn't open it again. I started writing a diary, an exercise in survival. Each day, a confession. Sometimes a good memory, sometimes a hateful sentence. One day I wrote, "Today I dreamed about him, and I felt no pain, just pity." And it was true. Pity came after anger. Pity for someone who had so much and chose so little, who was loved but didn't know how to love back, who left behind longing but also pain. And then, one morning, Something happened that I didn't expect. I got a call from Kaio. It was late, almost 2 in the morning. Sorry, Aunt Helena, I didn't know who to call. Aunt Helena. That took me apart. I told him to come here. He arrived with red eyes and hunched shoulders. He had had a fight with his mother. Things that come with age, probably. But what touched me was the way he sought refuge in me. Sit here. I'll make some tea. I, who spent years being the support of a man who didn't see me, was now being the support of a boy who also carried a part of my pain. An unexpected link. An air of blood and sorrow. We talked for hours. He told me things about his father that I didn't know. That he hated orange juice. That he was afraid of heights. That he liked to sing in the car. Little details that made me see Eduardo from a different perspective. And I told him my stories too. How we met. The letters we exchanged. The Sunday. Walks. For a moment, he became a child and listened to me with shining eyes. I don't think he was ever just one man. He was 2 men at the same time, Kaio said with a maturity that hurt me. Maybe there were several of them. One for each of us. I hugged that boy tightly. Not for him. For me. Because somewhere in my soul, something was rebuilding itself. Slowly, but real. Since then, he has visited me from time to time. Sometimes just for a coffee. Other times to listen to stories. Carla thanked me for not turning my back. She said that, as strange as it was, she felt that now we were all trying. To do what he never had the courage to do. Be honest. We are not friends. I don't know if we ever will be. But there is a silent respect between us. An unspoken alliance between 2 women who were once deceived by the same illusion. On Sundays, sometimes, I sit on the porch with my coffee and stare into space. And I think about everything. About Helena before. About Helena now. About Eduardo, Kaio, Carla. About the time that has passed. And how life has a strange way of sewing together the torn pieces. Today, I don't cry for him anymore. I don't wake up waiting for the pain to go away. It doesn't go away. It changes shape. It turns into a lesson, into a scar. And even though love died in a sad way, I was reborn. Alone, yes. But mine. I still write to understand what is going on inside. It seems that the more I talk, the more confused I become. What was pain has become a mixture of anger, sadness, relief, and guilt. All at the same time, and sometimes all mixed together. Eduardo's letter haunted me for the next few days. I didn't want to look at it, but it kept coming to my mind. I loved you in a crooked way. Is there such a thing as crooked love? Is there such a thing as love that justifies lies, that condones betrayal? Or did he use this as an excuse for himself? I found myself wondering, did he think he was a good man? Did he believe he made me happy? And above all, was I happy with him? I started to revisit every moment of our marriage, every party, every conversation, every gesture. I tried to find signs, clues, something that had gone unnoticed. But do you know what I found? Myself, slowly annulling myself, giving up my desires to avoid conflict, to maintain peace. A false peace, built on lies. I wanted to hate him. With all my strength. I wanted to feel that rage that cleanses the soul. But deep down, I knew that he was never just the man who betrayed me. He was also my companion for 20 years. A man who made me laugh. Who held my hand in difficult times. Who, even though he wasn't perfect, was part of my life. And it was this confusion that paralyzed me. I felt betrayed, but I also missed him. An absurd and contradictory lack. As if the person I loved had died long before him, but his body was still there. In the midst of all this, Carla appeared again. She called me on a rainy afternoon with a choked voice. "Helena, I wanted to apologize for everything. For keeping it a secret. for hurting you. I didn't know what to say. How can I apologize for something I don't even fully understand? I didn't know if it was easier to forgive or to continue holding on to that hurt. She said that Eduardo always spoke about her to me with affection, that he wanted everything to be perfect, but didn't know how to deal with his feelings. I listened, but everything sounded like an excuse. Does someone who truly loves act like that? Or do we just make excuses for things that have no explanation? I realized that this triangle was much more complicated than I imagined. Carla was also suffering, not in my own way, but she was suffering. And I couldn't deny that her presence in my life made me more restless than ever. So one night, I decided to face what I had been avoiding, Caio. I wanted to understand the son of the man who had betrayed me for 2 decades. I wanted to know if he saw his father with the same eyes I did, or if he had the vision of a son who doesn't know secrets. We sat in the kitchen, me, him, and Carla. An unlikely meeting. A meeting marked by pain and the need for understanding. Caio looked at me and said, "I know you suffered. I did too. My father was never perfect, but he loved you in different ways." I wanted to scream, cry, run away. But I stayed there, listening, because deep down, I needed to hear that. Carla then spoke, with tears streaming down her face. I never wanted to be the villain in this story. I was just the hidden part, the secret that destroyed everything. At that moment, I felt like we were all trapped in a web of mistakes, lies, and unresolved love. And that perhaps the only way to move forward was to accept that not everything has a simple explanation. But what moved me the most was when Caio said, "I wanted you to forgive each other, for him, for us." It was the first time I saw a light in the midst of that darkness. Forgiving was not forgetting, nor was it justifying. It was choosing not to carry the weight of pain forever. I still don't know if I can do it. Hatred still lives inside me, sometimes like a flame that threatens to burn everything down. But I also feel that this flame can warm me, strengthen me, help me rebuild. I am no longer the same woman who started this story, not by choice, but by the force of life. And this is what I want to share. Even in the deepest betrayal, even in the lies that last decades, there is a path to finding yourself again. It may be painful, it may be slow, but it exists. For now, I keep writing, I keep living, I keep learning to love myself beyond the pain. If I could go back in time, I don't know if I would do everything the same. But the truth is that life doesn't have a reset button, and we have to deal with what's left of this 20-year story. After that strange encounter with Caio and Carla, something changed inside me. It wasn't an immediate change, nor was it easy. It was slow, painful, full of ups and downs. Because when we discover such a long-standing betrayal, the feeling that remains is a confusing mix of abandonment, anger, and, strangely, an enormous desire for freedom. I remember that, on that gray morning, I woke up and felt that I needed to change. That house, which had once been my home, seemed like a prison, full of ghosts from the past. Every corner carried memories of him, of the lies, of the fake smiles. And I wanted more than anything to free myself from that. The first step was to allow myself to feel everything. The anger I had hidden for years, the sadness I had tried to hide with a fake smile, the feeling that I had been used and deceived. I cried for hours, screamed alone in my room, hit the pillow until the pain went away. I needed to get it out, because repressing it only made me sick inside. But freedom didn't come only with tears. I decided that I needed to rebuild my identity, the one that had been lost in the middle of the relationship. I started to take care of myself, to look at myself in the mirror with different eyes, to rediscover my dreams that had been dormant, while I tried to maintain a marriage that was just a facade. I went back to school, went out with friends, and started laughing for real, without fear. And it was in this search for myself that I realized something that had always gone unnoticed. I didn't need him to be happy. I didn't need his approval to feel complete. That emotional dependence that had imprisoned me for years was slowly breaking down. Of course, it wasn't easy. His family still looked at me with suspicion, as if I was guilty. And the judgments of people on the street, the looks, the gossip, all of that consumed me at times, but I learned to ignore it, to close my ears to what wasn't good for me. What struck me most during this period was a moment of absolute silence. I was sitting on a park bench, looking at the gray sky, when I realized I had a choice: to remain stuck in the past or to move forward with my life. And for the first time in a long time, I chose the second option. But the past is not easily forgotten. New doubts and ghosts arose. The letter he wrote to Carla haunted me. Did he really love me? Or was it all a well-constructed lie? Was I ever more than a convenience to him? These questions were going around in my head, but I decided that I didn't deserve to live trapped by them. And so I'm writing to you who are listening to me now. If you are going through betrayal, don't forget that the greatest strength is within you. The pain is real. The wound is deep. But healing begins when you choose to love yourself again. I still feel afraid of the future. I still have bad days when the past insists on knocking on my door. But I also have hope. The hope that even after the greatest betrayal, I can get up, rebuild myself, and be happy. We have reached the end of this story that transformed my life. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of lies and betrayals, and the truth only came to light when he died. I never imagined that my life would take such an unexpected turn, so painful, and at the same time so liberating. After everything I've told you so far, you must be asking yourself, what now? What did I do? How do I move forward? I confess that the answer is not simple. In fact, it is still being built, day after day, tear after tear, smile after smile. At first, the feeling of loss was overwhelming. Not just the loss of him, but the loss of what I thought I had built. I lost the man I loved, but also the confidence in what I believed was my life. The ground seemed to disappear from under my feet. But surprisingly, along with this loss came a kind of relief. Relief at finally knowing the truth, at being able to put an end to that story that was consuming me inside. Knowing that, as much as it had hurt, I was no longer living a lie without knowing it. The days following the revelation were a whirlwind. My thoughts were mixed between what he was for me, for Carla, and for Caio, between the man I knew and the man he chose to be behind my back, between love and betrayal. I was forced to face what I had previously denied. The marriage I had was not what I had dreamed of, but it was not completely false either. There were moments of truth, even if they were overshadowed by lies. I started going to therapy, a step that was hard for me to accept, but that I am grateful for having taken today. With each session, a part of me was freed. I discovered that forgiveness, for me, was not for him, but for myself, so that I could move forward without carrying the weight of resentment. And here is the most controversial point of this story. I decided to forgive him, not for what he did, but for what he represented in my life, because hatred only consumed me, only destroyed me. Forgiveness, as difficult as it may be, gave me the chance to be reborn. It wasn't easy. It's still not easy today. I still feel the open wound. I still have moments of doubt, of sadness. But now I choose not to let it define me. And what to do with all that I have experienced? Share it. Tell this story so that other people know that they are not alone, that even in the greatest pain, there is hope. That the truth, no matter how painful, is liberating. And you, who are listening to me, Have you ever experienced a betrayal that shook your life? How did you deal with it? Did you forgive, forget, or decide to move on and leave everything behind? I really want to know what you think about this. Leave your comment, share your experience, and strengthen this support network that we need to build. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like it, and share it so that more people can find comfort and courage. Thank you for following me this far. Life goes on, with its pains and joys, and I move forward, stronger, wiser, and above all, free.